HEAVE! What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Rook and the Kid podcast. I'm your host, the Rook, and I'm joined by the medical guy. And Happy New Year to you guys. This is the medical guy's first appearance in 2024, so we want to welcome him on as well. Always happy for his contribution. We'll be bringing back the injury analysis as well as the DB list exclusive, which has been one of our favorites as of late because there's been a lot of I have a feeling of who could be on the DB list this week, but you never know. But yeah, like if you're a first-time listener or if you've been here the whole time, just remember to like, follow, subscribe. Download our episodes, share it with your friends. If you find something informational or something you didn't know that you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a comment in the Q&A or the polls down below, and especially on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts, where you can find us. And then also, if you want to follow us on social media, you'll see us at TRAK.pod on Instagram and the TRAKpod on Twitter, and those are our primary social media outlets. But this is TRAK 30, the NFC East champions. The Dallas Cowboys have won the NFC East at 12-5 and will secure the number 2 seed versus the Packers, which we will cover all of the NFC and AFC wildcard games, which is popcorn, as I predicted. We'll have the Shatter the Script segment. We're going to be covering the national championship for college football, Michigan versus Washington. Although it was boring, we are still going to cover it. And then, we'll have our track ranking, and that'll wrap up our podcast today. But without further ado, per usual, we're going to start with the Shatter the Script. And let me share my screen right here. If you're watching, tune in. If you're listening, listen. So, but this is Richard Sherman talking about how earlier in the season, that Ceedee Lamb was not a bona fide number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. So let's take a listen here.
If you think he's a bona fide, line up out there 1, then that's overrated because
I do.
There are number 1s in the league. So you're saying he's in a conversation with Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, and Mike Evans. You're saying he's in that conversation?
Yes, in the conversation.
Then you're not what?
Ceedee.
Yeah, that's what's crazy to me is he mentioned the name Terry McLaurin, which when I first listened to that in the first place, I was like, damn, you got to be kidding me. I mean, we've kind of been through this, but Ceedee Lamb did kind of, we compare Ceedee Lamb and A.J. Brown a lot of times very, very closely. And we go, who's better? I don't know. He's more physical. He's faster. He's better after another catch. You can argue whatever you want. But they kind of had a season that flip-flopped. A.J. Brown started and had that streak of 125 plus yards or whatever it was, 5 games in a row. And then he just kind of teetered off as well as the team. And then Dallas up to week 5 into the 49ers game where all things blew to hell. We almost disrupted this entire podcast. And Ceedee Lamb had a better season than most wide receiver 1s would have in 18 weeks with over 100 receptions, over 1,000 yards since week 6. Which is very, very impressive. And he set many records for the franchise. He surpassed Tyreek Hill as the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football. I think he, without a doubt, really shattered the script on that one. And I don't really know why he made that basis for his claim. I guess, again, the national media, mainstream media agenda, this is what we do. We shatter it. But I'd like to hear your thoughts. And then once you're finished with yours, I got a couple stats from Ceedee Lamb that I was going to give out.
Yeah. First off, let's give a big shout out to the kid. He called this, 6 months ago or something like that, saying that Ceedee Lamb could be, a sneaky dark horse wide receiver fantasy 1. And I mean, he called it. I mean, he was wide receiver fantasy 1 or a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. And then he took a step further and he was the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL this year. And like you said, it's impressive to see what he did from week 6 on. And it's impressive not only because of how great his stats were, but he easily played himself into offensive player of the year, MVP talks and stuff like that with whatever, almost 1,900 total yards, 14 touchdowns. What did he go? 9 games in a row with a TD. Sorry if I'm taking for all your stats. But, it's just impressive that he's done all that. And, the Shatter the script to make that claim, 1 after week 5, 2 after 2 years in a row of over 1,000 yards, 1 year playing behind Amari Cooper, and then the year after that playing with just him at wide receiver, basically, because the talks we had last year about how there was essentially one weapon on the team last year, and then to do this, I think it's kind of nuts to say like, hey, he's not a bona fide one, and not to shit on Terry McLaurin because he's definitely a wide receiver one, but to say like, oh, he's not as good as him when he's put up similar stats to him, I thought that was a little interesting of a take, but I agree with you. It's just impressive to see whatever it is through 10 weeks or 11 weeks of him putting up, a well put together season in just that little bit of time. So let's hear your stats and see what else you have to say on it.
Yeah, I was going to read some of the screenshots that that Hunter sent me, but I was looking through my bookmarks and they are non-existent. So, but it was. Let me see if it's in this profile. It's probably in here.
Yeah, it's probably because of that tweet you put out about agreeing with Aaron Rodgers. So they just they just deleted everything.
No shit, but yeah. So the screenshots that Hunter sent me. This is from May. This is in a group chat that we have. So anyway, he's sitting there talking. I'm in it with a couple other people, and he says, just said this in the Dallas chat I'm in. I think Ceedee Lamb will be the number 1 wide receiver this year. This is in May of last year. Not overall, but this year. People were disagreeing with him, calling it crazy. And he said, I'm talking about for the league. What was he last year? He was 4 to 6. They're discussing it, blah, blah, blah. Then the next time he says, just because you are the best wide receiver 1 year doesn't mean you're the best in the league, which is, kind of what he's saying. Read the language of what he's saying. He's saying this season he is going to be the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy, in yards, and wherever he ranks. But he doesn't mean he's the best in the entire NFL. But he's a bona fide wide receiver 1. And the guy asked, "So you're saying Ceedee Lamb will finish wide receiver 1 next season?" Yes. So yeah, and then he just goes on to say he says, "I can see 1,600 yards in this." And what did he finish with? Over 1,600. And that's a hell of a take from the kid there. So absolute props there. The stats that I had, it was talking about how Ceedee Lamb basically ranked first in everything. I mean, even if I didn't show you, what they were exactly or where they came from, I remember it was from CBS Sports or Yahoo Sports, 1 to 2, and it was just first in all categories.
Yeah.
And I can share it maybe later in the podcast if I find it. I'm not sure where it's at. But yeah, I mean, just excellent take from Hunter there. And congratulations to Ceedee Lamb on a fantastic season, and hopefully he can continue that production in the playoffs. Yeah, and so one of the things we wanted to get into as well with the Shatter the script is when Dak Prescott guaranteed that he would have fewer than 10 interceptions. And where did he finish at? What? Less than 10 interceptions, 9 interceptions to be specific. He threw that last tip ball against Washington, but he finished with 38 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, over 4,500 yards with a over 69% nice completion percentage. Just a fantastic year. It's sad. It's sickening that, a stat line like that, which is best in the league in pretty much all categories, won't win MVP. But to say the least, he over exceeded my expectations. He was phenomenal almost all year. Just an excellent season for him. Really shattering the script on what the narrative was with Dak Prescott going into 2023 after last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's crazy about that is that I believe Dak Prescott didn't even make that comment. He was asked,
yes,
or a reporter asked him about it, or said something in the nature of that, and it got put out there that he said he wouldn't finish with 10 interceptions. And it's kind of like he did, what was it, 4 years ago, where he came out and proved that he was good to elite quarterback, whatever you want to say. And, you know, it's debunking the narrative that he had an interception problem, obviously. And I think Ryan or you sent out the stats. I don't know if it was a week ago or a couple weeks ago. That what are there like 6 quarterbacks ever in NFL history that have a lower TD to interception rate than him, and it's like 1.4 or 1.5.
Yeah, he's up
And
there.
so even with the interceptions he had last year, he was still at like 1.6 or 7. So it's insane that was considered a problem. It's just a lazy take, a very at the time or recency take. And I'm glad that he played as well as he did. And at the same time, you said he exceeded your expectations. To me, he met the expectation because we've seen him do it before.
Right.
And that's kind of my take on it, is that like this isn't necessarily new from Dak Prescott. This is just different from an outlier that he had last year. And so that's just my take on debunking that narrative.
Exactly.
Or shattering that script.
Exactly. All right. Well, now we'll transition into our 2-minute drill presented to you by the medical guy, which is injury analysis and the DB list, otherwise known as the down bad list.
Yeah.
So we haven't had the DB list in some time. I think it's since around Christmas, just before Christmas. So we've got a big update coming in there just in time for the playoffs and wild card weekend. Some very crucial injuries to the offensive line, to skill players, quarterbacks, whatever it may be. So let's hear it.
Yeah, so let's get it started. There were actually a lot more on the injury list that I anticipated, but we'll get it started. We have Gabe Davis, questionable with a knee injury. Amari Cooper, questionable with a heel injury. Myles Garrett, questionable with hamstring and a shoulder injury. An interesting one for the Cowboys. Tyler Smith still questionable with that plantar fascia tear. Now, in my personal experience, I've never heard of like fully tearing it being better, but if you could think about it, I guess it kind of is, because there's less tension at that area. However, to kind of explain it, it doesn't necessarily like feel good per se, but it feels a little better than it just hanging on by a thread. Tony Pollard actually had this injury a couple years ago. Next, we have Sam Laporta, who's actually doubtful. I know we saw that knee hyperextension, very similar to the one that Travis Kelce had at the very beginning of the year. Probably got a little bone contusion, bone bruise there in the knee. Like we talked about earlier in the year, what it causes is a lot of internal bleeding in that area, a lot of swelling, a lot of pain and discomfort and lack of range of motion. So he'll probably get that knee drained, and it's very doubtful that he plays, and that's a big one for the Detroit Lions. Next, A.J. Dillon is questionable with a stinger, running back for the Packers. Romeo Dobbs or Doobs, however you say his last name, questionable with a chest injury. Jalen Waddle, wide receiver for the Dolphins, has a high ankle sprain. He's been dealing with it last couple of weeks. With those fast guys, and especially in that high flying offense, that really plays to them really well and could really hurt that offense and hurt him even more if he tries to go out there and push it, depending on how he's feeling. Next, Xavier Howard. He has a foot injury. He's questionable for that defense for the Dolphins, who's already lost a ton of big weapons. Raheem Mostert, the running back, questionable with an ankle injury. Now we move on to the Eagles, who had when they had a brutal game, but it seemed like they made it worse. Like, it was a bad game. It was like, oh, it can't get worse than this. And then it was like, these 3 dudes get dinged up. We got Devontae Smith, questionable with a leg injury, lower leg injury. A.J. Brown was questionable with that knee injury. We all saw him get I think he got carted off the field, but I'm not sure. And then we all saw the picture in the video of Jalen Hurts' finger on his throwing hand. That's questionable. Probably a little deformity there. And they probably had to pop it back in place. Luckily, no fracture or anything like that. Just hope he's good to go by the game and he's not hindered any. And then last, we have TJ Watt, this is what I'll go into with my video. He is out with that knee injury. And so we'll get into it with this video. I'll share my screen. And so we'll get that going. So we have it slowed down. And if you watch number 90 right there, it's kind of friendly fire on this play. So it goes up and they're all going for the ball right here. Sorry, I have it slowed down. So it's going to take a second. But they're going to circle him and you'll see him kind of come down, kind of that valgus motion. So basically his knee goes in. Whoop. And so, yeah, it's not fun. And so what that's going to be an MCL injury. And so, you have your ligaments of the knee, you have your ACL, your PCL, your LCL, which is your lateral ligament on the outside of your knee. Your MCL is going to be that medial ligament on the inside of the knee. And so the biggest thing with that is that it's one of the stronger and harder ligaments to injure right there. And so it's really, really painful. So you saw on the video during the game, he was, hitting the ground with his fists and stuff like that, because it truly is painful. I know his knee will be swelled up, and I know for him to be like that and the injuries he's played through, that really had to hurt him. And the biggest thing is that's tough for that defense there, because we know he's multiple defensive player of the year candidate, big driver for that defense, lead top 3 in sacks this year. And so that's going to be really tough with their next opponent coming up. Yeah. So hopefully, a quick recovery process. And, if they pull out a win, maybe we'll get to see him in the next round. But usually those injuries, I think they graded it out as a grade 2 MCL sprain. Depending on the healing process, usually a 4-week thing at the minimum.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's not that long, but he is considered out for this game. So it's big time for that defense right there. But that wraps up the injury list. Now we move on to the infamous DB list. And I have 3, I guess technically 4, but we'll go from 3, 2, 1. I have the Titans firing Mike Vrabel. I think that's a terrible move. Terrible move. And the dude just he did so much with so little. It seemed like once they got going, like they got rid of AJ Brown. Burks hasn't worked out. Quarterback hasn't really worked out. I know Will Levis looks promising, but it just felt like if there were 2 stable things, it was obviously Derrick Henry and the coach. And I think that's a terrible decision. Next is Arthur Smith. It's just an odd year with that team, because he had so many weapons, so many things. Don't necessarily agree on the quarterback decision most of the time. But it's just the lack of use with those weapons and whatnot. And it kind of stunk because he got fired, and the tweet came out at 12:01 a.m. after the game, so they didn't even at least let him get a night's rest. And
they didn't even give him the 24-hour rule, bro.
Yeah,
he was out of there.
Couldn't even get him like a 9:30 tweet. No, it was like 12:01. You're gone. Second on the DB list is the Star Wars saga. So I know we talked about it a little off record, but don't necessarily agree with the hiring. It's kind of hope for the best, expect the worst, because we saw what happened when the previous producer and stuff like that came in and made the last trilogy, which wasn't very good. And then we move into this and they change it to something else, and it just doesn't seem like it's gonna go well. Hope for the best, expect the worst. And then lastly, I know this video has been going around. It's very unfortunate, but the video of the guy who jumped into the Bass Pro Tank. Pro Shop.
Oh my God.
I don't know what he was strung out on. But there's 2 things that he makes the DB list for. 1, getting butt ass naked and jumping into that tank. 2, he was not up to what you may consider average in in the area of the male organ. Not saying any of us are well endowed or anything of that, but you'd at least see mine from a camera. And man,
he didn't do white people very proud there.
Yeah, they're and none of the cops or security helped them out. I mean, a towel, a coat, for him, maybe a thimble, but something that would have helped him out.
Yeah, maybe a camo jacket or something like that.
Yeah, just anything. And then they drug him out of there, and you just saw everything. And unfortunately, we saw nothing and saw everything at the same time. So just not a good day for that guy. And just ultimate DB list in multiple ways, man.
Yeah, rumor is they fished him out of the tank with one of the expensive rods and reels that they have set up in the store.
Yeah, we're just gonna go with the water in the tank was about 30 degrees, and just really didn't help him out. So
yeah, we're gonna go with negative 30.
Yeah, so he had an innie for sure. But that wraps up my 2-minute drill. And I think we're gonna move into wild card weekend predictions. Want that?
Oh yeah. I have a very quick one, and it's if you haven't seen The Last of Us, the episode either 3 or 4, the one with the 2 male partners. He won an award for best guest appearance in a TV series or whatever it was, and there's a possibility that they might make a spinoff off of that episode. So nice job. You're really good at acting very homosexual, I guess is the right term. So you're really good at, almost too good at that. So you won an award for being
ultimate actor.
Oh yeah. So okay, all right. Enough funny business. Wild card weekend. We got the NFC wild card, the AFC wild card. We got some key matchups for you guys. Obviously, the 49ers, the NFC get the bye, and the Ravens get the bye in the AFC. But we wanted to start off first. Obviously, the 2nd seed is the Dallas Cowboys, and they're playing the 7th seed, the 9-8 Green Bay Packers at AT&T Stadium. So we're going to go ahead and start our tracking the boys segment up front, and then hit it heavy, hit it hard with some Dallas Cowboys content. So without further ado, we got some predictions on this game. What do we feel like is going to happen in this one? I understand, and I can give my initial thoughts on it. This is a tough one. This is exactly what I said. I kind of mentioned it on some social media sites about how the whole wild card setup is going to be popcorn. And I'll kind of give a layout here. You've got the Cowboys and the Packers. That's an historical rivalry in the playoffs and in the regular season. Aaron Rodgers has gotten the best of us in the past. They had the famous Ice Bowl years prior, or I guess you could say decades prior. Just a lot of history within this one, and we know how a Cowboys-Packers game usually go. Even 2 years ago, I believe, or last year, we had fits with them against a struggling Packers team. And so now we're playing this young Jordan Love quarterback who has over 30-plus touchdowns in basically his inaugural year, I guess you could call it. And they've had a high-powered offense the last 5 weeks. This is not going to be an easy game by any means. Then you move to the number 3 seed, the Detroit Lions versus the Los Angeles Rams. And this is one that, as I mentioned before in the previous podcast, is get your popcorn ready. It's the Lions' first time hosting a home game in the last 30-plus years. Jared Goff, who was traded away from the Rams, playing Matthew Stafford, who was traded from the Lions to the Rams, and they're facing off against one another. And obviously, if you're not aware of Stafford, he was over there in Detroit for 10-plus years. They're a big facing off. And then the one that intrigued me a lot was on the NFC side is, and I didn't know about this until I saw, independent creator kind of post this, and it said the last time Baker Mayfield made the playoffs with the Cleveland Browns, he played Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers, who went 11-0 in the regular season and then finished 12-4, had a bad back end of the season. Then Baker plays them in the first round and crushes them 48-37 in this back and forth. And Big Ben was devastated. A lot of memes came out about him. And then you move into this year. The Eagles started out 10-1, one of the best, hottest teams in football on paper, according to critics, mainstream media, blah, blah, blah. And then they finished the year 11-6. And who they play? Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we've got this NFC slate, and I'll go into the AFC later. But this Dallas game is going to be very important. By any means, I don't think it's going to be a blowout. Like some people might say, Dallas should handle him. No. If you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, you should know that we have no idea what's going to happen in this game. At least I don't. I have a close prediction, but I really think if you're going to want to win this game, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you have to just feed Ceedee Lamb until it breaks. He's proved to be unstoppable against really any defense. The Packers defense has struggled all season long. You get Ceedee Lamb in motion pre-snap. You incorporate Ferguson over the middle to bring those safeties down, like I've been saying all year. And you just, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And then complement that. Use the pass to set up a run with Pollard getting about 70% of the snaps, and split it with Dowdle getting about 30% in between the tackles. But yeah, what are your initial thoughts on this game too? And I'll kind of add in, as we go along.
Yeah, so I have the for any of y'all that are bettors or keep up with the spread or over under, I have the Dallas. They're marked at -7.5 Dallas. Over under is 50.5. Okay, so they're expecting some points. Okay, and to give Dallas over a touchdown favorite, kind of crazy. But see, I kind of have a little bit of a different take. I think that Dallas does win this handedly. Okay. However, my thoughts about it are, you can't go into this game conservative. I think Dallas is the better team. I know pardon my take, they always do what's called a dude off or a guy off, right? And if you just line up and look at like position by position, who's better? I mean, Dallas is like worlds better.
Yeah.
Offense, defense. And so I think you have to go into this being extremely aggressive on both sides of the ball. And like you said, that means don't wait to feed Ceedee Lamb. Get it to him.
Yeah.
Get it to him. Establish who you are early. Okay. And I think on the defensive side, be aggressive. I know if you look at a lot of the Packers offense, it's a lot of deep throws. It's a lot of big plays. The old Aaron Rodgers offense where it's play action and then you're hitting somebody on a post or a deep route. Right. It's very similar to that. And I think that works in the Cowboys' favor with the pass rush. And I think that's going to be the key to beating them, is forcing Jordan Love to be perfect and to make all of those throws. And I think you said it in the last podcast or the podcast before about, yes, Jordan Love's been very good. I'm not discrediting him at all. But their last 5 or 6 games, you talk about popcorn. They faced a popcorn schedule, and
that was the Animals. Yep.
Ryan. And so it's been very similar to like the Lions, right? They've outscored everybody. And I know that sounds like, oh, you always have to outscore it. No, it's been shootout style games, right? You go look at multiple games, they're having to score 30 and win by 3 or 30 and win by 5. And I think that works into the favor of the Cowboys either way, right?
I agree.
Because the Cowboys offense can take it to you real quick. And if you get in a shootout and have to sit there and drop back, I think that favors the Cowboys really well. And so my prediction is 31-17 Dallas. I think that they get after them pretty early, and it's going to be one of those very similar. I'm not comparing them to Washington, but very similar to Washington, to where right before half and right after half is where it's like game flips like that. And so that's what I'm predicting. And then letting that defense just absolutely get after the quarterback. And then my biggest takeaway is be aggressive and don't let this team hang around. Get after them early, get after them until the game ends. Right. So that's kind of my take on it. What do you got?
Yeah, I think those are good points as well. And on paper, we should do what we came to do. And we're on paper. We got so many more guys. We got all pros almost at every position you can argue. I just know the Dallas Cowboys, and I just know that no game is going to be close. I mean, we had a fantastic wild card game last year against Tampa Bay against Tom Brady, but nobody was expecting that. And that's exactly what a Cowboys game is. It's something that you're not expecting. So yeah, but if we're going to go your route here, I think it's like what you're saying, like towards the end of the second half, towards the beginning of the third half, that's when Dak really starts to get in a rhythm. He gets the ball back at half, but before the half, he gets that 2-minute drill. And he just sits in shotgun. Here we go. Boom, boom, boom. Down the field, 8 straight completions going into the second half. Gets him into a solid rhythm, because I wanted to bring up some stats about Dak Prescott here about how effective he's been in targeting vertical routes. So Dak Prescott completed in week 18, completed 4 of 6 passes targeting vertical routes for 26 yards and 3 touchdowns. He threw 23 touchdown passes targeting vertical routes this season, the most in a single season since Andrew Luck threw 24 in 2018, which is an impressive number and an impressive name to be categorized by. So I think when you're judging the Dallas Cowboys, you look at it as in Dak is the engine of this offense, which is what we've been saying for a long time. And I might sound biased. Yes, I am the Dakciple, but if you really want to get cooking on offense, Dak's your guy, and Ceedee is, the complement to your engine. And by all means, you can get that ground game running after you set up the pass, which is, your reverse psychology, the new metrics of today's game. That's just a plus. I mean, we would run all over them. The question is, we get pressure on the defensive side of the ball, with their lack of offensive line. I think you mentioned some injuries. We got a rookie quarterback. Can he get rattled under pressure facing the number one edge player in the NFL, and Micah Parsons, which Marcus Mosher on Twitter with Locked On Cowboys said that if I'm Matt LaFleur, I'm telling the Green Bay Packers to hold Micah Parsons every play because it's been since
11.
week 7, over 50-something quarters since Micah Parsons has gotten a single holding penalty. Think about that. Imagine your best edge player, and there are pictures to prove it, and I'm not trying to be like a victim here. We still win anyway. But, when you look at it, you're like, how is the best defender in football who has the highest pressure percentage, how is he not generate a holding call in over 10 weeks? It's just blasphemy. But I have a different prediction. I have the Cowboys winning this game 24-20. I think it's going to be a closer one. I think, like you said, Dallas kind of starts kicking it into gear in the second half. And one of the things that scares me that I wanted to bring up, and this is credit to the analysts, that's his work title, it's kind of funny, the credit analyst, he sent some stats talking about what the Dallas Cowboys run in terms of coverage. And here I'm going to share my screen with this because this is pretty eye-opening and kind of tells you our scheme. So here we go. This is from Twitter. Of course, this is where I get all my news sources. But if you look at it here, we run cover one almost more than anybody. And this is what Ryan has been saying, the analyst has been saying for a long time, is our scheme is a lot of man down and a lot of blitzes because we don't have to do too much stunts when you have Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, as you see on the bottom, if you're reading, he's playing great, especially for his age. And Osa and Dorrance Armstrong are picking up their part of the slacks. And of course, all green categories for Micah Parsons in terms of efficiency and percentiles there. But zone is not the way to go if you're the Dallas Cowboys. But what scares me the most is if you're in cover one, you're playing a fearless quarterback in Jordan Love and some streakers, as in Jalen Reed, Christian Watson. Those guys can knock the top off of the defense at any time. So I would imagine some shots being taken by Jordan Love in this game. So it's going to be up to our secondary. I'm sure Gilmore is going to be fine. I think they took him out for precautionary reasons. But we got to be locked down. We got to be staying in phase. I'd like for us to play the ball, not the man, and that shit helps. But if we do that thing, I think we're going to lock down the Packers, and we will advance to play our next opponent. But yeah, those are some cool stats there. And credit to, let me find who I credit here. This is a new page. I actually haven't seen it. Summer Sports, SUMER Sports on Twitter. Summer Sports. So yeah, 24-20 Dallas. And so we'll get into our Mamas Don't Let You Cowboys. What is your take here on the Mamas Don't Let You Cowboys?
I mean, it's kind of what I said throughout my tracking with the boys. Don't let the Packers hang around in this game. Mamas don't let the Packers hang around in this game, and don't be conservative. I mean, that's where it seems like
In life,
the
too.
that's where it seems like the Cowboys get themselves beat is when they really rein it in. They're like, oh, when they go into like, hey, let's try not to make that mistake type game. And I think there is a time and place for that, but I think that's more or less, in past Cowboys teams, right? You run the ball to chew the clock. I think now with this Cowboys team, you get up like they have been, and then you go into that like, hey, let's hit these short routes.
Right.
Let's go intermediate to short routes and control the game that way. But more or less, mine is mamas don't let your Cowboys let the Packers hang around in this game.
Yeah, and if we jump out early like that, that's heyday for a pass rusher. Jordan Love's going to drop back the pass, easily get to him, get some pressures in. And so my mamas don't let you Cowboys is mamas don't let you Cowboys disguise Jordan Love as Aaron Rodgers. They are not the same yet, but an impressive season for Jordan Love. Let's end it this Sunday at 3:25. Let's do our jobs. Let's beat the teams that we're supposed to beat. Playing at home, we're on paper, we're juggernauts at home. Let's prove it, especially in a big atmosphere. Let's get Dak Prescott and this Cowboys team another shot in the divisional. All right, and then I want to do a little Dak on track segment here, and this is kind of our overall analysis. We've been tracking Dak since the beginning of the season, and every week we've given him a letter grade. And we pull up his passing charts and we've evaluated, how did Prescott do this week? Oh, well, he struggled. Oh, he did good. And, we've seen some exposure from the kid who is the Romo sapien, as we call him. I guess a Dak realist. Yes, a perfect word. Yes, a Dak realist. And he's very down to earth with him. He's giving him higher grades, which we kind of joked about off record. And Jacob, the medical guy, has given him the lowest grade in one of the episodes that we have. So it's kind of funny that we have Dak Disciple giving him the lowest grade, which we critique Dak, and then we have. But anyway, we wanted to average out the whole season and give Dak a letter grade on his entire 17 weeks of football play. Of course, he played 17 games, had 38 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, like I mentioned, over 4,500 yards, over 250 yards rushing, and 2 rushing touchdowns. And I have some stats here that just proved how efficient that he was under pressure, which I think really matters as a quarterback. I mean, and not to mention his third down stats, which were near first all year long. I mean, me and Ryan talked about it, the analysts, that he is a third down king. And here we go. You can see it. You should be able to see it. So, okay. Dak Prescott was calm under pressure in 2022. This is from Brandon Lurie. 61.5 completion percentage, first. Over 1,300 yards passing, first. 73.5 PFF pass grade, first. 77.8 PFF offensive grade, second. 8.3 yards per attempt, second. 14 big-time throws, tied second. And 98.8 passer rating, tied second. Those are all stats under pressure according to PFF. That's amazing. And that's what you're looking for in a franchise quarterback. That's what you're looking for in an elite quarterback, a top 10 quarterback, a top 7, top 5, whatever you want to call them. So what is your letter grade for Dak this season in 2023 to 2024?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. I'm giving him an A. And, you could go through every stat. You could go through, EPA, CPOE, pressure, rating, everything like that. And really, I have one line, and I give him an A. And reason being, using stats or eye test, he is first to fifth in all statistical categories for a QB. And he's done this while also sitting out approximately 7 quarters this year. Okay. And I don't think people take that into consideration a lot because there's, 7 quarters? That's almost 2 games, right? And so, it really just goes to show how well he did. And it also defeats the narrative about stat padding as well. And he's done it against good teams, bad teams, okay teams. Yes, he's had his blunders. But really to have, if you look at 17 games, he had 2 games where he was just not good. Right.
Yeah.
And, I just can't and I just can't see giving him anything below an A. And so my grade for him is an A on the year.
Yeah. So I did. I went through every grade I gave him every week. I went through all my notes and was like, what grade I give him here? What grade I give him here? And I averaged them out. And what I got, you know me, I like to round it up as a number. But what I got was that he was an A as well. It was my letter grade. But he was right at an 89.9 in terms of number grade, which I think is perfect for Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I thought was awesome is, and I had it in my notes as well, is that there were really only truly only 2 games where Dak did not, quote unquote, show up. And that was at San Francisco and at Buffalo. And those were just, neither side of the ball really showed up. And it was just your goofs of the year. And you can argue the Arizona Cardinals as well. But if you look back on that game and you remember watching it, the offense was moving the ball. We just didn't convert in the red zone. So the efficiency was there. It just didn't show up on the stat sheet, which life is more about stats than it is, it's about the game. It's about the eye test. He kept his interception promise and exceeded expectations for all fans and media. And then the Lamb and Dak connection was first in basically every category. I mean, that was probably the best duo we saw all year, arguably. I mean, you could argue also, Tua and Tyreek Hill, of course. And then all year, like I mentioned before, he was the engine to this offense. And that goes into, I want to give credit to Mike McCarthy as well, and moving off of Kellen Moore and just creating this Texas Coast system, which I think is a perfect fit for his play style. Getting the ball off quick, working on footwork, eliminating those hitch steps, and really getting the ball in rhythm, in timing to your number 1 receiver. And, Brandon Cooks, he was able to incorporate him for 8 touchdowns this year. Tolbert and Gallup got some wide receiver 4 action. Ferguson became a dominating factor at tight end this year, had a big jump from last year. I expect bigger things in season 3. So I give him an A, round out to about a 90 grade. So, all right. And now we'll move into the rest of our NFC matchups. So we got the Lions versus the Rams. And like I mentioned before, I kind of gave you all the rundown of how big this game could be in terms of popcorn. All right. Lions 12-5, Rams are 10-7. Rams really flipped the script. When we played them, they weren't as good. They were kind of unhealthy. And once they got Kyron Williams back, man, really things really changed. They turned around for the Rams. And credit to Sean McVay. Their scheme has always kind of worked, but you get those white boys out at wide receiver, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee. I think his name is Skowronek or something. One of the
Tutu Atwell,
but then there's another white boy on that team, as well. But shout out to and Kyron Williams. I saw him with his helmet off. He might be white too. He just might not know it. Like the question is, can he say it? I don't know, but that's besides the point. But my official prediction for this game, and I think this is going to be close no matter how you look at it. And it really is a toss-up who's going to win, because the Lions have shown that they've struggled against the Bears. They've struggled against the Lions. They lost on Thanksgiving versus them. They got blown out by the Ravens. I don't really trust the Lions. And they're still crying about when they lost to Dallas because of an ineligible player downfield with Decker. And they're still posting about it to this day, which I think is a complete victim in mindset. It's pretty pathetic. And so we might be living rent-free in their heads into this matchup. I think they're looking too far ahead to play the Dallas Cowboys, that they'll kind of struggle in this game. And that's just kind of a methodical standpoint there. But I do have the Lions winning this game 17-16. I think the Lions survive in a defensive battle between 2 franchise quarterbacks, and the offensive schemes cancel one another out in this game. You got Ben Johnson and Sean McVay's schemes. Ben Johnson's a head coaching candidate. He's been an outstanding coordinator for the Lions. I think they'll contradict each other, and you'll actually see the defense shine in this game. But I'm taking the Lions over the Lions defense over the Rams defense in this one, in a very close one.
Nice. I have the over-under stuff like that. They have Detroit at -3, so the 3-point favorite, over-under 50.5. And so, they expect some offense. And so I have two different predictions, and it depends on if Sam Laporta plays. If Laporta doesn't play, I have the Rams winning 24-21, sorry.
Okay.
And if Laporta plays, I have Detroit winning 28-24. Now, I will say this works in Detroit's favor because Detroit is an indoor team.
Yep.
And if you have looked at their whole schedule, when they play indoors, they're a different team, similar to Dallas. And
Yep.
you know, I think the Rams defense have to do similar things to the Lions as the Cowboys did, where they've got to make Jared Goff uncomfortable. I think when they got pressure up front, got in his face, it was much different. Okay. And you saw kind of at the end of the game when the Cowboys went in to put everybody on the goal line, he was able to, zip it around everywhere. But we also got to, like your popcorn point, this is a matchup between Stafford and Goff. And, it is just funny how that worked out. And I think it's going to be a really cool game to watch, just if you look at the history of it. But I, for some reason, and I've said it before on the podcast, and now that the Rams are healthy, they're good enough to beat bad teams and sneak one out, but they're also bad enough to lose to good teams. And so I think that still holds true to this day. But those are kind of my predictions with that game. I think Laporta is really he's a 3-point player in scoring, swing and score. And so 3 to 4 point player. And so I think if he's out, plus I think Brock Wright was was injured the last couple weeks of the season. He's still dealing with a little bit of injury. So it'll be interesting what they have going on at tight end. So if Laporta's in, if Laporta's out, I have Rams winning 24-21. If Laporta's in, I have Detroit winning 28-24.
Yeah, good prediction. I hate to hate on the fan base because Brock Wright's my guy. He's one of the guys I'd love to have on this podcast and talk to from his perspective, being behind a guy like Sam Laporta. So Brock Wright, we hope to have you on soon. And you can bash me all you want about the Detroit Lions. I would accept it. I'd love it. Okay, moving on to the number 4 seed versus the number 5 seed. You got the Bucs hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles have had their struggles. Buccaneers, they scrapped by. They were, at the second half of the season, they were the better team in the AFC South, and it was a trash division. I really don't think any of those teams you can look at them and go, okay, yeah, none of them are going to make the Super Bowl, but one of them is going to make the playoffs, I guess. We got the Buccaneers, and I think that was the best of the 4, obviously, excluding the Carolina Panthers. But in this game, I don't know if AJ Brown, the Eagles got beat up, man. I mean, in their last game versus the Giants, they didn't look good either. They're going into this game, I would argue, with negative momentum. I mean, it has been atrocious the way that they finished the season. There's talks of firing Nick Sirianni. The loss of their coordinator has been devastating. Hurts is struggling. I've heard he had a dislocated finger on his throwing arm. And so, if there is no AJ Brown, and Sirianni, rumors of him being done in Philadelphia, Hurts having this off year. I think Baker controls this game with a 1-possession lead. They'll get out in front. He's very, very good with a lead, most like any quarterback. But that's Baker's identity. Get Rashad White, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and those kind of guys in rhythm. Their defense for the Tampa Bay has been playing pretty well all season. I trust the Tampa Bay defense over Philadelphia, Philadelphia's defense has kind of been atrocious all year, especially in the later half of the year. I've got the Bucs winning this game in a close one, 23-21, advancing to the next round and ending the Philadelphia Eagles season, a lot like Baker did against the Pittsburgh Steelers when he was still in Cleveland. Yeah.
And so, you have a lot of the same points as I do. However, Philly is favored by 3 points in this. Over under is 43.5, so a little lower than the other games we were talking about. But a lot of the same points. Philadelphia's injuries from last week look like they may come back to haunt them. You said Philadelphia is going in with negative momentum, negative energy. I have written down Philadelphia has somehow just turned into a bad team, it seems like. And, you know, in the beginning of the season, the offense was kind of carrying the team. Defense was struggling. Right now, the offense can't really get it going, and the defense is what it is. And they took another injury to one of their safeties on Philadelphia, and that doesn't help them whatsoever
at all.
And so it really is going to be tough. And like you said, I have on my notes, I have this is going to be a day full of Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. I think just lighten it up. And you know, I really don't see this turning out too well for the Eagles. I don't think their defense is going to be able to contain them. I do agree with you. I think it's going to be a one-score game. However, I think it's going to be Tampa Bay 24, Eagles 17. Okay. I think, you know, it's going to be like that. And I think Philadelphia is going to have a chance to win it at the end, or going to have a chance to tie it at the end, have like a last-minute drive. And I just don't think it's going to work out for them. It just doesn't look like you said, they don't have any momentum. They don't have any rhythm going forward into this matchup. So I think it's going to be, if Philadelphia can pull this off and get hot again, they could be scary. But how it's looked in the past 6 weeks, they just look like a totally different team.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. Okay, that wraps up NFC matchups, and we'll move. Okay, we're going to move into our heave of the week, and this is CJ Stroud and Nico Collins. But before we get in the heave of the week, I have a little new segment that I wanted to incorporate. Since fantasy football season is over, there are no more Rooks looks. So I decided, me being the Dakciple, and I've been doing this like once a month, I would say on Twitter, is I am adapting a Bible verse into Dak Prescott and Dallas Cowboys terms, because as the Dakciple is an adaptation of the word disciple. So Galatians chapter 8, verse 4. Remember not the former things, nor consider the turnovers of old. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now the scheme springs forth from the west. Did you not perceive it? I will make way in the bay that is green, and the lamb will flourish abundantly in this city. So basically, amen. The Dakciple bringing it to you. And that is an adaptation of Isaiah 43, 18 through 19. But basically, to kind of break that down as a pastor would, basically the beginning said, remember not the former things, nor consider the turnovers of old, meaning forget the interceptions of 2022. Dak guaranteed its discontinuance, just as a Messiah would. And in his new scheme with new players, he is thriving, and fans and critics doubted his success in that second part of the verse. And then moving on, he said he is coming for Green Bay in round 1 at home in the city, and will use Lamb to combat them. And then, of course, all of this shatters the script. So that is your Galatians chapter 8, verse 4. Chapter 8 meaning season 8, verse 4 meaning he's number 4. And then, of course, you've got your heave of the week, and that is.
Have you posted that yet?
No, it will be posted once the podcast opens up to everybody. It'll be posted. So tomorrow. But here we go. DJ Stroud to Nico Collins, and this was the first play of the game versus Indianapolis in Week 18.
This is a nuke.
Yes, it was a nuke. All right, so you can see. I feel like I'm bringing out the inner analyst here. All right, looks to be a zone coverage here. The Houston Texans 9-7 versus the Indianapolis Colts at 9-7 as well. It's a win-and-in game on January 6th. We're surprised that Dalton Schultz is out on the field today. Woke boy, as they call him, line up on the top of your screen in the tight end formation. Stroud snaps the ball. He thanks Jesus for his service, collects his feet, shuffles up, and heave! Nico Chico Collins. Hey, Chacho, Houston, what's up, man? Hey, Nico Collins scores a touchdown off the rip in the first possession, first play for the Houston Texans, and CJ Stroud means business. And
what an absolute dot right there.
What an absolute dot. Exactly. Great heave of the week, CJ Stroud, and congrats on an incredible season. A former Christ follower. I am not a current Christ follower. I'm sorry. So shout out to CJ Stroud on an incredible season. Houston, your city is thriving. And, little conspiracy theory here. The Super Bowl logo has changed. and it is now red and blue. Texans Cowboys Super Bowl. Just kidding. Oh my god! But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Okay. Let's move on to the AFC matchups. Okay, we're going to start off with the number 2 seed Bills versus the number 7 seed Buffalo. Or, I'm sorry, number 7 seed Pittsburgh Steelers. Gosh. Okay, for this game, man, this is scrappy. When I know TJ Watt's got that injury looming for him, which could mean a lot. Obviously, the Ravens get the bye. And the Bills, me and the analysts predicted correctly that the Bills would win versus Miami, giving them the number 2 seed, which is a big change in this AFC lineup. But let's give the rundown here. We got, and this kind of gets popcorn as well, besides this game in Buffalo. I mean, no one cares about the Steelers. They really shouldn't be in the playoffs, thanks to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But we've got the Chiefs versus the Dolphins. I think this one's important as well if you're looking for popcorn, because this is Tyreek Hill's return to Arrowhead in Mahomes' city, his former team. You know, grab your popcorn. It's a playoff game. First time that the Dolphins have played, you know, the Kansas City in the playoffs with Tyreek Hill. This is also the first time that Mahomes has not earned a first-round bye or a home playoff game in his career, which could, you know, precede some negative events. And then, of course, you got the Browns versus the Texans as well this Saturday. Texans hosting a playoff game in Houston. If Deshaun Watson wasn't hurt, you would have had Deshaun Watson playing against his former team in Houston versus the new age CJ Stroud. That's popcorn. I mean, yeah. I mean, back to his massage parlors in Houston versus a Christ-following quarterback representing the new team. So, yeah, I mean, big popcorn stuff in the AFC as well. But, yeah, to get to the Bills versus the Steelers, like I said before, the Steelers do not belong here. But I think they'll give Josh Allen some fits in round 1 because, you know, Josh Allen's had the struggles with turnovers all year. You know, he might start off very anxious like he did in the Miami game, just kind of making some silly mistakes, which is why I have written in my notes that this is going to be kind of a scrappy and ugly game. But I have
exactly what I have written down.
Yeah, scrappy, ugly game. And what's funny is every Steelers game that I've done, especially like those AFC rivalries in that division, the AFC North, you know, I always said it's going to be a little dicey. I used other words, but I had in this game that the Buffalo Bills are still going to triumph in this one. And it won't be close, but it'll be like, man, what in the hell are both of these teams doing? And I've got the Bills winning this game 26-17, moving on to the next round. What do you got?
Nice. So Buffalo is a 10-point favorite. So -10 Buffalo, over under is 36.5. So you can imagine, you know, they're not even predicting it to be a high scoring game at all. But I have same things as you. I have this is going to be an ugly game. The TJ Watt injury definitely affects how this game's going to go, especially from the defensive side for Pittsburgh and offensive for Buffalo. I have, if Josh Allen doesn't turn the ball over and make those just kind of out of pocket mistakes that he's done throughout this year and his career, I think this is an easy game for Buffalo. And on the Pittsburgh side, there's two things I think that would really help them is force Josh Allen to try to play hero ball and to shut down James Cook. I think those are two things. If you've seen in the past, you know, since they changed offensive coordinator for the Bills has really incorporated James Cook not only in running but in the pass game. And so I think he's obviously you've got Diggs as well. But with Gabe Davis dinged up, you know, you've kind of got that eliminates one weapon at least to where you can focus on one or two. Now you still have the definitely good tight end duo at Knox and Dalton Kincaid, and so it's definitely not easy looking at the weapon standpoint. But I think with Gabe Davis gone, it might help a little bit. Biggest thing is going to be try to make Josh Allen try to make that just unreal play and then shutting Cooks down. And then the Steelers just try to have some type of positivity on offense. I don't think it's going to be very easy for them at all, but you know, Mason Rudolph has been swinging it. And just getting those two weapons on the outside, Johnson, and then George Pickens incorporated often and early, really helps that offense out a lot. But I am predicting Buffalo wins this game 24-13.
There you go. Yep. All right. So Bills advance according to TRAK. Okay. Chiefs versus Dolphins, 11-6 for both teams. This is the number 3 seed versus the number 6 seed. The Chiefs are hosting an Arrowhead, like I mentioned before. Look, I mentioned it that Mahomes could have some negative circumstances happen in this game. Seems like they've been cursed ever since Kelsey has been dating Taylor Swift. This is the first time he's going to play. He's playing at home. But this is a game that I think the most high-powered offense in the NFL on paper is just going to trump the Chiefs, because the Chiefs have had their offensive struggles all year. Their receivers have had struggled catching the ball. Kelsey's production has lowered because, they know he's their primary weapon. He's their only weapon. Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jerry McKinnon, that's a good little trio of running backs there. I think the run game could really complement and control this game in a low-scoring environment. And I have a low-scoring prediction as well.
I think McKinnon's out. I think he's on IR.
Yeah, and even if, with the remaining two, it's just I don't know if it's enough to outperform A-Chain and Mostert and Jeff Wilson. Their running game and their scheme is it's a little dynamic. I wouldn't want to doubt Andy Reid with his playoff experience, because Mike McDaniel's only had one playoff game without a starting quarterback. This will be his first playoff game where he actually had Tua in the game. So this is going to be an interesting one. But I've got the Dolphins winning this game 16-14 in a low-scoring battle. A lot of times these primetime games, Tua does not really light it up in terms of the scoreboard. It's usually those noon windowed games where you're just like, oh my God, the Dolphins scored 60 points. This is playoff atmosphere. I think it's going to be enough to defeat the Chiefs. And Mahomes will get his first ever playoff exit. And, there'll be cries for help for Mahomes, all offseason, saying that he needs more weapons, which he 1 billion% does. And this isn't a knock on Mahomes at all. I really do think that a man can only do so much. And he's had his struggles with the refs. He's had his struggles with the team, with drops. So I think an offseason to get that offense patched up could do him some work. But yeah, Dolphins advance.
Nice. So we got Kansas City as a 4-point favorite. Over-under is 43.5. So they're also expecting, if you were to look at these two teams last year, you'd expect a totally different over-under, but the over-under is 43.5. I kind of go in a different way than you. I think Miami's injuries, especially on the defensive side, have taken a toll on them. And it just shows, especially on defense, and then with Jalen Waddle out, Jalen Waddle dinged up, that they're just they could get kind of clunky and out of rhythm on offense, because they really, yes, they rush very good, but when they pass, they kind of go, it's Tyreek Hill or nothing, it seems like. And so at the same time, that loss to Buffalo for Miami really screwed them up in the seedings, because now they have to go to Kansas City and play a bad weather game. I think the report's already out that the expected wind chill in Kansas City is supposed to be like -10.
Yeah.
So it's going to be real interesting to see how Tua plays going from Miami to Kansas City. And I don't know if you listen to this podcast, but I've been listening to this podcast called Greenlight with Chris Long and his brother and a couple other of his friends. And he talks about Tua, and I never really thought about it until I started watching and listening to that, is that Tua is a very one-read quarterback, and not taking anything away from him because he's still a good quarterback. But when he gets into that second read, he gets very panicky. And then later on in the game, as we've seen throughout the year, is he'll kind of say, F it, Tyreek's down there, let's get him the ball, and then throw just to like in the Ravens game specifically, it was like an F it, throw it to Tyreek, and there's 5 Ravens right there. And it's like that throw wasn't even close to being there. So it seems like he has a real problem checking the ball down and taking the more conservative play. But I think Kansas City defense is really well and is going to do a really good job at doing that. But I have Kansas City doing just enough to win, but this win is going to look kind of gross. You're going to be like, ugh, how'd they win that? And then Patrick Mahomes will probably make this crazy run as he always does. But I have Kansas City 24, Miami 21.
Yeah. All right. You gotcha. Okay. Browns versus Texans. Texans are hosting the Browns in Houston. Look, for this game, I've gone back and forth. I really cannot decide a winner in this game. I think this is going to be the closest matchup in terms of teams on paper. The Browns defense, obviously top 3. Flacco's been playing out of his mind since he came back, as a game manager, as a veteran, as, a perfect implementation into this offense with incredible defense. CJ Stroud has had an incredible year. When he's in, things change, especially with Nico and his young weapons that he has out there. Dalton Schultz has been a serviceable guy for Houston as well. Ever since they made the switch from Dameon Pierce to Singletary, their run game has changed. And I really can't decide on who's a winner. I mean, Texans, if I'm the Texans, the last time they played, Amari Cooper went for 250-plus yards on or whatever it was. And I know that Davis Mills was a starting quarterback in that game, so CJ Stroud has not faced this defense yet, which kind of worried.
I think Case Keenum actually started that, and then they had to bring Davis Mills in.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it was a scrappy one because you didn't know who.
Yeah,
it's just a brutal game. It's a brutal matchup. But the thing about Stroud that gives me confidence, though, is that under duress, like when he's playing from behind in close games, I've seen a lot of his noon slot games. He plays very well and very, very efficiently from behind. And if you keep this close, I think Houston has a really good chance of winning their first playoff game in a while. And I literally have a score, and it could be either one. But I have the Texans winning this game 23-21, but it could easily be the Browns 23-21. But I just gut feeling. I think the Flacco magic might end in Houston. I think they got the better of him the first time, but I think DeMeco Ryans is a coach that has been here before and knows the way to success with 49ers, especially defensively. And he gets the win here. It's just my gut feeling. But
yeah,
hey, disclaimer, the Browns are really freaking good.
Yeah. So I have Cleveland. They're a 2.5-point favorite. The over/under is 44.5, which I thought was kind of high. But I'm going to listen to Vegas on this. But just some of my notes here. Yes, Joe Flacco has been playing over the expectations as much as you could say. However, he does have a turnover problem. I think he has like 13 touchdowns to 8 interceptions on the year. So that part kind of scares me for the Browns, is that his defense has really been, like, obviously he's been doing enough to win games, but like you're not doing that unless you're not throwing 2 picks a game if your defense isn't just like bailing you out. So I kind of agree with you. I think Joe, and it was a stat a couple of weeks ago that the Texans had like the highest percent of turnover rate when playing like considered subpar quarterbacks. And so I'm expecting this to be one of those. He might have a couple of turnovers and whatnot. So, but to agree with you, CJ Stroud, this is a CJ Stroud. You've got to carry this team. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball very well. I think they're going to try to lock down Nico Collins as best as they can. So I've written down that the secondary weapons of the Texans need to show up, whether it be Dalton Schultz, whether it be John Mechie, whether it be Robert Woods, whoever. I think they're going to have to carry some of the load as well, and maybe getting Devin Singletary involved in a lot of the pass game. But I agree with you, and this is kind of a shout out to the Texans, man. I mean, they honestly could have Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Offensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Rookie Defensive Player of the Year. And like I've said for a while now, if CJ Stroud stayed healthy all year, he could equally be in debate for MVP. Because I mean, you looked at how the team looked when he's not at the helm, and they're a different team. Like they're the team, literally the team from last year without him at quarterback.
Yeah.
And so I think he's got to play perfect to win this game. And I think he can. And so that leads me into my prediction. I have Houston winning this game 27-24.
There you go. Damn.
Yeah.
No, I think we matched on all of them, right?
Yeah,
As the
except
Chiefs?
Miami and Chiefs.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
There we go. That'll be hopefully we're right. And I've been taking some chances on some predictions, especially, I don't really bank on rookie quarterbacks winning their first ever playoff game. But Stroud hasn't been playing like a rookie. He really has been playing like a veteran. His comp coming into the league was Dak Prescott, ironically. So it's going to be it's going to be a fun one. I think this is one of the more one of the playoff games that I'm interested in watching. God, I sound like get. But yeah, this is going to be an exciting wild card weekend. So if these predictions come to fruition, it would provide the following matchups for the following week, which I'm already eager to predict. But you got in the NFC divisional round, the number 1 seed 49ers take on the number 4 seed Buccaneers in the Bay. And then you got the number 2 seed Cowboys taking on the number 3 seed, depending on, who's right. But let's say Laporta plays, taking on the Lions in Jerry World. And then in the AFC divisional, you've got the number 1 seed Ravens taking on, if you're taking my route, the Dolphins in Crimeville, as I call it, in Baltimore, or the number 1 Ravens versus the number 3 seed Chiefs. Oh, no, actually, it would switch. It would go number 1 Ravens versus number 4 Texans, and the number 2 Bills versus the number 3 Chiefs. But if you take my route, it's Ravens, Dolphins, and then in the next divisional, number 2 Bills versus the number 4 Texans at Bills Mafia. So some interesting stuff. Some really exciting divisional. I like those matchups. It brings out popcorn. So yeah. All right. Well, let's move into our TRAK rankings. And this is our top 3 sports moments from 2023. And there are multiple different ways you can go with this TRAK ranking. I mean, we could go comedy here. I was toting the line between comedy and being real. So I chose the real route.
I have one comedy.
I thought about it. I might throw one in there as we go along, but medical guy, let's start with your gold and we'll work towards platinum, then to diamond, and we'll switch off in between per usual.
So my first one is actually an honorable mention. I'm taking a page out of yours and the analyst book. And this is my comedy one. Take it how you may. But honorable mention, if you want to consider it sports or not, but the USA trading Brittany Griner for war criminal, and then Brittany Griner taking almost a year off of professional basketball, and then coming back into the WNBA and absolutely just dominating and putting up career stats.
Oh my God.
Take it as a knock as you want, but I think it's kind of crazy that a person could take 10 months off of training, nutrition, whatever you want to say, be in a prison in another country, and then come back and absolutely dominate their sport. And so take it as you may, but that's my honorable mention. I thought that was a funny one. For all you listeners, we'll get serious after this one, but my honorable mention one is the USA trading Brittany Griner, or trading a war criminal for Brittany Griner and getting her back to the WNBA where she belongs.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Okay. My honorable mention, and this one was funny, in my opinion, because Aaron Rodgers has been a headline all year long. And it's not the Aaron Rodgers headline you're thinking of. My favorite was when he went into, and this might have been last year, it might have been the year before. My favorite is when he went to that dark house and sat in darkness for 4 or 5 days to contemplate whether or not, yes, it was last year, because he was debating on joining the Jets or going back to Green Bay.
Yeah, he was 90% retired or something.
Yeah, he was like, I think I'm going to retire, but let me sit in darkness for 5-6, hours. It's kind of like, hey, I'm going to bash a video game that I've never played before. And it's like, all right. So I've never tried a darkness retreat before in my life. So it probably worked really, really well for him in terms of mental aspect, but I thought it was hilarious. I mean,
Yeah.
it stole headlines. People are like, I wonder what he's thinking about. Like, oh my God, he's in the dark for a whole weekend or whatever. And he comes basically out, almost like Jesus was coming out of the tomb and was like, Jets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay.
Let's hold the Jets and the Packers hostage and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. He raised his hands out, and the media was there taking pictures of him. He was like, "Behold, I am a New York Jet," and they're like, "Okay, all right. Well, there's the headline. He's a New York Jet. We had to wait 5 freaking days for him to announce that.
Yeah.
Cool, awesome. Thanks for stealing the headlines. But yeah, there's still a war in Israel. So, all right, gold ranking.
All right, my gold. And some people might think this is a contradictory take, but I'm gonna give it. The Texas Rangers winning the World Series. Me being an Astros fan, it hurt. Yes.
Yeah.
However, Texas Rangers, if there was any team to be my second favorite, I'm gonna cheer for the state of Texas. Texas Rangers. It was cool. That's their first one in their history of their franchise. And it was kind of cool how they did it. And I guess kind of nerve-wracking how they did it, how they gave up the division lead and then came back all the way around to win it and whatnot. And how we talked about back when, early days of the pod about like if the Rangers could figure out just even how to be okay in their bullpen, they'd be a really good team. And they turned it on in the playoffs and had 2 or 3 arms that figured out how to pitch and in the bullpen and ended up getting a dub, winning the World Series, and it was just super cool to watch.
Yeah. That's a good one. I appreciate you putting that one in there. All right, my gold ranking was the Texas A&M Aggies fire Jimbo Fisher. This is one of my favorites from last year. Me and the kid have been talking about it off record. The pro style offense, all the quarterbacks that have come through, just the disappointments of going 7-5, 8-4 all year long, not beating the teams we're supposed to beat. And just all quarterbacks going in there. I'm taking control of this offense. Every one of them just looking hella robotic. I couldn't stand it anymore. And now we got the new head coach from Duke, and I'm excited for what's to come. Hopefully, we can actually get a quarterback. Maybe the Duke transfer, the Duke quarterback that was playing really well before he got injured might transfer to A&M. Who sees the transfer portal is crazy. NIL for Texas A&M could influence some decisions. But yeah, I mean, this was a positive sign for Texas A&M, in my opinion. I love when the athletic director came out and basically laid it down and said, yo, when you're in the far left lane on the highway and the dude's in front of you in the passing lanes going 65 and you're pressing him 75 and you want to go faster, you want to go further, you want to go farther, all that kind of stuff, and they won't move. And that A&M was that car going 65 miles an hour with Jimbo Fisher. I thought that was legendary. And a perfect take for those Texans who are in your Dodge Rams with your LED lights flashing the shit out of somebody right on their rear, and you're just trying to get to where you need to go. So, all right.
That's a good one. Nice. I'll go into my platinum, and this might be a little out of the norm, but
all 3.
Yeah, I have the LSU Iowa NCAA Women's Basketball Championship. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't watch the Women's National Championship that much before, but you saw it was Angela Reese and Caitlin Clark, and I thought that matchup and that whole playoff system on the women's side was so much more entertaining than the guys' side. I mean, you had 2, I guess polarizing figures for both teams, being dominant, and literally it seemed like best on best. And, the different antics, the waving by or whatever to a team and then, pointing at their ring finger and whatnot with like 6 minutes left in the game. I feel like I feel like that's what more sports need to get people more engaged. And I thought that one was huge for, especially women's basketball and women's sports going forward. And it was cool to see like how great those talents were, and seeing, even this year, seeing both those players still show out, and seeing Caitlin Clark hitting like, 45-foot
NBA
3-pointers
threes,
and
yeah.
just like holding it up and whatnot. I think that was super cool. And so that's my platinum ranking from this past year.
Yeah, and and I was gonna say that whole series or that whole game was like a damn on social media. It was like a damn race war. You're like, it's like no, this was just entertaining.
It was super fun.
Yeah, it was
Like,
fun. It was you got a sparky figure on the LSU side, and then you got a very I guess you could say.
I mean, Caitlin Clark did the same thing for Iowa. I mean, she's over here like hitting a go-ahead 3 and like throwing up the deuce sign to the bench. It's like they're doing the same thing to each other. Yeah,
exactly. And I actually did watch it, and I will say, side story. My mom is a high school basketball coach. So I've always enjoyed when I was in high school going to watch all our games, and then when they made the state championship, it's very entertaining stuff.
Yeah,
if you're into it from like a community standpoint. And so you kind of felt like you were part of a community there, and you're like, oh, like, screw the men's basketball. That's just basketball. We've seen that before. Caitlin Clark's hitting 60-foot 3-pointers, and Angela Reese is out here, spinning, doing Kareem Olajuwon stuff, and it's like, okay, yeah, this is entertaining. Actually, yeah, absolutely. Okay, my platinum is Jimmy Johnson being inducted into the Dallas Cowboys Ring of Honor. I think this really broke the curse. This might have broke the curse for the Dallas Cowboys. This is one of the ones in the list where it's like, why haven't we done it yet? I mean, he is, by far one of the most, just vibrating personalities on television. He's been on Fox for a while. He was already inducted to the Hall of Fame. He got the gold jacket, putting tears in Troy Aikman's eyes, which was very emotional to see that live. I had a buddy, a very close friend that was at the game. The stadium was just going absolutely bananas when he said, how about them Cowboys? Very nostalgic. I understand we haven't won anything since that time, but, I didn't live during that time as well. But the echoes and the whispers of the 90s was crazy. We ran the 90s, and Jimmy Johnson was a huge reason because of that. So shout out to Jimmy Johnson being inducted into the Dallas Cowboys Ring of Honor. Jerry Jones, you finally did it.
Yeah, just get rid of Rowdy and we're good to go. No, that was a good one. I definitely should have put that on mine. I completely forgot about it. I guess because since it was so close to the new
we were
year,
digging in the past.
I didn't even think about it.
Last January.
Yeah, and then my diamond one is going to hurt your heart, but the Jose Altuve 3-run home run in that matchup, and just like growing up an Astros fan, and you understand it being a Rangers fan too, because there was a time and point where they were terrible. Yeah. And you have like your certain players that were there when they were bad. Well, Jose Altuve was that. And to see how good he is and how great he's been in the postseason and whatnot, and just to see him do it time and time again, and then him do it there. And I specifically remember you like texting us, be like, oh, this shit's over. He did it again. This freaking guy. And I'm like,
dude, he can't miss.
Yeah, it's just like he hit that and it was like they're cheating again. It's like, oh
yeah. I was angry, bro.
Yeah, dude. And like just watching that, and you were just like every Rangers fan was like, just this guy, not this guy, anybody else, and it was like,
he's a guy. Yeah.
Sure enough, 2 people on Jose Altuve up. The bullpen that had been good for so long in the playoffs. And I mean, they made one mistake and then reverted back to being good again. But it was just like that moment, how you felt about like, oh, it's over. That I felt the opposite and was like, all right, it's on now. Like, we're taking this. And then obviously, we lost. But I thought that was just seeing that playoff run and, how the Astros did the opposite of the Rangers, where they snuck in and then did what they needed to do. And just seeing all that, and then seeing Altuve do that to kind of break the Rangers' hearts for a game, it was fun. And seeing that player do what he has been doing for years now, it's always fun when he does something like that.
Absolutely. And my diamond goes hand in hand with that.
Yeah, I know what your diamond is.
Yeah. My diamond is the Texas Rangers beating Houston in the ALCS and winning the World Series and getting their first ever World Series ring in franchise history. This is the first time my team has won anything in my lifetime. So, and yeah, I mean, from A&M to Dallas Cowboys to the Texas Rangers, there ain't a lot of championship winners. I used to be a Spurs fan. I just I don't buy into too much of the NBA anymore, but they won some championships, and I was like barely even paying attention. Like, I didn't know what was going on. So I was like, yeah, whatever. And so, but yeah, like in that moment when Altuve hit that bomb, I was furious. I said some things on text that I was just like, I really regret it. And I was calling him, a midget, and that he was cheating and all this kind of stuff. And it was kind of trolling at the same time. But I literally felt like the meme from Breaking Bad where he's like, he can't keep getting away from this.
Yeah.
He can't keep getting away. And it was because he could not miss a ball. Every pitch we threw to him, it was whack. And I'm like, I can't stand it anymore. Strike this dude out. Hit him in the kneecaps. Do something. Like, charge the mound. Somebody bring a bat. Something. Get this guy out of there. And in respect of the game, because baseball is a game of failure. Altuve was by far the most entertaining, from a baseball standpoint, an entertaining figure for Houston. On the flip side of that, Adolis Garcia and Corey Seager, those guys were worth the money. Marcus Semien, he didn't play very good in the Houston series, but he picked it up in World Series. But just those guys, it was truly electric. It really was. And to see at this age, of course, the first year that we had, their inaugural year of our podcast, and having them win was highly entertaining, especially when we were in the ALCS, we're like, both our teams are in. Let's talk about it. And it's a very rare occurrence. You're not going to see a lot of, maybe you will, but you're not going to see a lot of Houston versus Texas Rangers ALCS matchups to get to the World Series. That's a rare occurrence. Yeah. And so I knew it was for all the marbles, which is why it was so intense. And then, of course, thank God that Arizona did their job against Philadelphia. I think the series would have gone longer, but it was kind of a cakewalk in the World Series. But the real World Series was that ALCS.
Yeah, and that's like I've said to a lot of people, like the Texas Rangers and the Astros being good at the same time is so good for not only Texas, but baseball. Like, you don't have many in-state rivals in the same division. And them being good, like, it's just going to be, as long as they're still good for years to come, like, it's going to be fun to watch, and it's going to be a competitive division. And, we're going to have these banters back and forth about all that. And hopefully we do get a bunch of ALCS matchups and the World Series running through Texas. And that would just be super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think both teams will still be good for a couple years to come. Let's hope, at least.
Yeah.
All right. Now the most boring game of our timeline. I don't want to be like the Eeyore of the group, but I mean, this national championship, we're going to cover the national championship. This is the number 1 Michigan Wolverines versus the number 2 Washington Huskies. Michigan comes out on top of this one, 34-13. I thought we had some different takes in this one. I think I put it in the outline. Yeah. Do you have the scores up? I have.
We have the Rook predicted 28-23 Michigan win. The analyst predicted Michigan 35, Washington 21, and then I predicted Washington 34, Michigan 28.
Yeah. So then
I was wrong.
Yeah. So I had the kid. The kid also had a prediction in there. So he had 34-21 Michigan, which he was actually the closest out of everybody. And he doesn't really watch a lot of college football. And he's so invested into NFL. And so me and him were like, I guess we're going to sit down and watch this game, and I love college football. It's just, it was a game that I was like, man, Michigan's offensive line they were duoing the crap out of people, to quote the analysts. Yeah. I mean, their offensive line was working in this game. I think his name is Donovan Edwards, number 7, the running back for Michigan. Played fantastically on the ground. Corum, their running back as well, who's going to be an NFL running back for sure. He thrived. McCarty only threw completed 10 passes in this game. It was just there were opportunities for Washington to get back in this game a lot of times, but they just never could do it. It was interception, fumble, 70-yard run by the Michigan Wolverines, and he was back to a 2-score ball game. And it was close, 13-20. Momentum started to swing. Washington's defense kind of settled in, and it just, after that, it just wasn't the most entertaining national championship. I got to be honest. And I'm disappointed in that. But congratulations to Jim Harbaugh. After all the scandals, after all the cheating thing, and I don't know if they're true or not, but hey, undefeated is not easy to do in college football.
Yeah, and like you said, congrats to Michigan. Congrats to Jim Harbaugh. I thought it was super cool that like John Harbaugh made the trip and and that I think that's genuine from like Jim Harbaugh to like his brother walks up, he's coaching in the middle of the sidelines and he like takes his headset off and like hugs him. It's like, some coaches get way in. I don't want to say way into it because that's their job and that's what they're there for, obviously. But like to just take a moment of like realism and just being completely genuine and being like, dude, my brother's here. Like he's about to play a playoff game. And he comes to the sideline, gives him a big old bear hug, talks to him for a second, and then he gets back to business. I thought that was super cool. But to get into the game a little bit, my prediction was based off what Michael Penix did to the University of Texas defense, which wasn't a bad defense. And Michael Penix made them look like a bad defense. But at the same time, we could look at that game against Texas and Michael Penix made every throw. And so, honestly, if he played 80% of that game, I think this is a much different. I don't say Washington wins, but I'd say it's a much closer game because there was 5 or 6 throws where Penix was just not there. And I mean, like wide open throws and reads and whatnot. I also said multiple times in the group that I know that the running back was a senior, wanted to play, but that dude was he was hurt, very hurt, and was hurting his team because he could not. His biggest thing is that he's great in pass pro. He couldn't move, and so you got offensive linemen or defensive linemen, linebackers, whatever, just barreling at you, and he can't sidestep either way. So Penix, who's not a runner, was running around for his life, trying to escape everything and whatnot. And, you could go, there's been so many videos put out about missed penalties and whatnot. I don't think it really matters. Like,
I don't think
like
it does
you
either.
said, Michigan controlled that game up front from start to absolute finish. And I have a note that Michigan should have ended this game earlier, but it seemed like they did whatever they could to let them hang around. I don't know why the ball didn't get handed off left and right for a majority of the game. And the old saying about like having that one part of a group member that doesn't do anything but still gets an A. That's kind of how JJ McCarthy seemed to me. Because he didn't have to do anything. And like you said, it was just kind of it was cool for about a half, and then it was like, dude, this game sucks.
Well, it reminded me of like there was a meme on Twitter. It was a bunch of ants carrying a bagel.
I saw that,
And there was one ant on the big ass ant on the top, just kind of looking at everything. And somebody replied and said, "That's JJ McCarty." And,
exactly.
I thought that was hilarious. But one of the things I did not know about Michael Penix Jr. and just kudos to him because especially for what you cover in injury analysis, he's had 4 season-ending injuries in his career, which is, I mean, think about that. That is insane. And, I did not know that coming into this game. And he's out there, battling. I think he got banged up because he got stepped on the ankle, faced a lot of pressure in this game. There's a lot of resiliency with Michael Penix Jr. And one of my favorite things about lefty quarterbacks is one, they are frowned upon, especially in professional football. It's very rare that you see a lot of lefty quarterbacks. But like they do with Tua in NFL, like they did with Vic, is they'll mirror the screen. And when you mirror the screen, you watch Penix throw a football, you're like, hot damn, that is a sick release. It's got zip on it. Because from a lefty perspective, and me, myself, I am left-handed, just I guess for public announcement, it doesn't look like you have as much velocity as a right-handed thrower when you're throwing on television. It just doesn't. But then when you translate it to baseball, you're like, oh, it's the most valuable position, you could argue, is a left-handed pitcher.
Everybody has a kid, and they're like, all right, put that ball in his left hand. Put that bat on the left side of the plate. It's like, we're not, don't we're tying his right hand behind his back. He's left-handed till he's 6. Like,
yeah. I need to make a shirt that says "Switch hit, don't switch genders." But
oh God,
I'm just, but I can cancel.
podcast has now been. Oh.
Yeah, but anyway, that would probably make a lot of money with conservatives. I'd probably just send it to the Hodge twins or something. But
yeah, I
awesome.
do agree about the resiliency and whatnot, and I think he's come out and said like that's why he stopped like being such a mobile quarterback, because if you look at a lot of stats from the games all year, like you're like, damn, they're scoring a lot of points, like yada yada, and it's like Michael Penix has like 2 rushes for -1 yards or something. Like he stopped running the ball due to injuries, and I think that gives more props to him that you could like damn near eliminate a part of your game and still be as good as he is. And then, you know, you talk about mirroring the arm action and the throws and whatnot. And yeah, when you mirror it, it looks like a laser. And I just want to know who they're going to do a comp of them against, because, you know, everybody, the easy one is, you know, Tua. But like really,
that's a lazy one, yeah.
But like really, when you flip it, and just growing up and watching like Texas quarterbacks, he seems to have more of like a 3/4 like slot. And one quarterback I can remember throwing like that, and he kind of got dinged for it, was Vince Young. Now, obviously, he doesn't run like Vince Young did, but like when Vince Young came into the league, that's what he got knocked for, was he threw it kind of a sidearm motion. And they said like, oh, it's going to get batted on all the time and yada yada. And then he won Rookie of the Year his first year. And so that's all I could see when they flipped the image, is that wow, it's kind of like out there. It's not your normal like you know, all shoulder everything,
non-traditional.
But it's very cool to see that. And yeah, when they flip it to a right-handed side, like it's like a missile.
Yeah, and he's pelting it, and he's got it's very loose, it's very free, it's very instinctive, you know, and I appreciate that from a left-handed standpoint too. Just like I had a lot of fun watching him in his highlights most of the year, and you know, he's got some dogs at receivers too that are going to make it in the NFL.
We know the Polk kid is from Lufkin.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's from Lufkin, Texas.
Shout out the next Des Bryant.
Yeah, good old Lufkin Panther, baby.
Yeah, the good old Lufkin Panthers. Yeah. All right. Well, congratulations once again to the Michigan Wolverines on winning the national championship. And I guess we will see college football back late next August, or this upcoming August, which is going to be depressing to think about. But hell of a college football season. We'll see how the new schedule plays out. Obviously, you got, you know, A&M and Texas in line to play the final game of the season, which will be they're already sold out, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I think the cheapest nosebleed seat right now is like over $300.
Yeah, left like
bunch of communists. Yeah. So I'm gonna try and watch that one virtually. But all right. Well, this has been Track 30, the NFC East champions. We shattered the script for you guys in a lot of moments. We get your popcorn ready for the AFC and NFC wildcard weekend. We got some incredible matchups. Hopefully, we end up being right in a lot of our predictions. You know, the college football season has come to an end, but we still got a little bit of football left, and we got some exciting stuff for you guys in season 2 of the Track Pod, which we're going to have some really fun changes, and I keep hyping up. We're making a plan, and we're excited to implement them, you know, come, you know, late February, early March, and announcements of that will be on our Instagram and Twitter. But yeah, so you can find us on below at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube primarily. If you want to watch us instead of listen, obviously YouTube and Spotify are your way to go. But if you just want to listen, you know, Apple Podcasts is the best platform for that. If you're just solely looking for that, just a quick little play, and you can always mark as played if you don't want to listen to us, but just give us that play button, please. But yeah, like, subscribe, follow, download this episode, share it with your friends, share it on Instagram. Any of your guy fellows or even girl fellows that, you know, that enjoy sports and enjoy the mainstream media being absolutely shattered every week. You know, that this is your podcast for it. So we're going to thank you guys for an awesome 2023 once again. And, you know, we've had great contributors on our side. And so sooner rather than later, like I said, late February, early March, we will be having the kid back in office, and we are ready to rumble. So shatter the script. We will see y'all next Wednesday. How about them Cowboys? Go Cowboys. and we'll see if they pull off the win. So we'll see y'all next Wednesday.